Electoral body, the IEC, is going to honour females tomorrow, honour women, as we get to the end of Women's Month, getting to the close of that. It's going to focus on gender parity and gender-based violence, but the political kind, gender-based political violence. We understand the Minister of Women, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, will be giving that address. There's a lot of issues, though, to unpack, and it's always good to have the Commission's Moagisi Sibanda joining us this morning. Moagisi, morning to you. And just like Tumza was talking about later this morning, the President going to be out talking to young men and young boys about GBV in our country. Politically, though, is enough being done? As you celebrate Women and Women's Month, in your mind, is enough being done politically to get on top of this issue? Good morning.
Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to all the viewers of EC and eNCA. Indeed, this is a very important subject. And as the Electoral Commission, for us, this is something we wanted to ensure that we promote during this Women's Month, this very issue of gender parity and gender-based political violence within the country. And tomorrow we'll be having that dialogue, and then we have invited a number of experts as well as stakeholders who'll be coming together to really tackle this challenge. And together we look towards putting together some strategies that will enable all of us to ensure that we have more women as representatives, especially as leaders, and ensure that we take away or move towards removing all of the hindrances that lead to women not being as present as they could be within the political leadership spaces.
How do we change that? How do we get more women into leadership positions? A lot of criticism aimed at what was known as the Moonshot Pact, this coalition of political parties. No woman in charge there. National government, very few, certainly not in the top two positions. Would that change if we had a woman president or deputy president? Would that change things, do you think?
Well, these are the things we need to look at. So let's look at this. In terms of the voters' roll, women form 55%. And even on voting day, we all know that, more than half constitutes of women who actually show up on voting day. But we don't see this translating necessarily when it comes to party lists and women's representation. So participation in the form of voters and voters who are registered, that is there. But in terms of representation, there definitely are some issues. And we have invited the Commission of Gender Equality as well as Gender Links, who look at all the elections and have research that they have done, and they'll be giving us tomorrow as setting the scene in terms of what is the state of gender parity within South Africa. We have also invited political parties, Gareth, and as part of our program, we have asked them to make statements towards gender parity and what it is that they'll be doing to ensure that there is no gender-based political violence, especially in the upcoming election.
Help me understand that, because Tumza mentioned this when she was talking about what's coming up on her show, 9 o'clock. Gender-based violence, a second pandemic is the way it's being described, and I couldn't agree more. Help me understand, what is gender-based political violence? I understand GBV. I don't understand it. I mean, I know what it is. It'll never make sense to me. But what is gender-based political violence exactly?
So it is GBV, but it's the kind that is directed specifically at women. And it is aimed at intimidating them and putting hurdles in their journey towards political leadership. And this could take the form of actual physical violence. It could take the form of intimidation, cyberbullying. And we have been working with social media platforms talking about these issues, and we've invited them as well for tomorrow to talk about cyberbullying that may take place and what tools women can employ to protect themselves on the internet spaces, harassment, but also just, silent types of violence, because violence doesn't always have to be physical. It really just can be exclusion and how that hinders women's participation and representation. So there's all forms of violence that we'll be talking about and unpacking tomorrow at the dialogue.
So it's one thing to talk about the tools and the skills needed to handle gender-based violence and gender-based political violence when we're talking it from the woman's perspective. But with the president talking to young men and young boys later, how much focus, let me ask it this way, is there enough focus on education for young men and young boys in our country on what gender-based violence actually is? It can't just always be the women's side of education, because the issue is it's a masculine issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the state of our, society, the fact that it's been called another pandemic in South Africa, it shows that not enough has been done. And for us, tomorrow's dialogue is not just targeting women, it's a multi-stakeholder, because we really need men and women to be participating in these conversations, to be sensitive towards the impact of GBV on women in all sectors of society, and not just in the political space. Economically, it becomes an impediment when women are faced with GBV. GBV even in the workplace in forms of harassment. So it is really a broad spectrum pandemic, as it's been called. And it requires that men, young boys are educated, are sensitized from a young age on how to treat one another as human beings. Because I really believe if we bring it down to how we treat one another respectfully as human beings, some of these issues will begin to fall away. And the younger we teach the boys as well as the girls what is acceptable and what is the right way of doing things, I think we'll really be able to tackle it, so that by the time we get to these spaces of political participation, when they're a little bit older, the challenges won't be the same as what we're dealing with currently.
Yeah, and I suppose there could be an argument as well that that should be happening at home as well. But we all know about single-parent households, young boys growing up without father figures. There's that whole discussion as well, which maybe we can talk about another day. But for the moment, good luck for the event tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have follow-up discussions around that. The IEC's Moagisi Sibanda talking about what's going to be a focus on gender parity and gender-based political violence. It's an event being held by the IEC tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be a lot of feedback from that, which, of course, we will pick up on as well.